Gosh, guys, you'd really think podcasting was super easy, right? All you got to do is talk into a freaking microphone, right? But for whatever reason, in this particular video or podcast, I had a little bit of a background echo, and I actually heard it all throughout the podcast, which is likely why, at least at the start of the podcast, you'll hear it a little bit, but you'll also hear me not really conversating like I usually do, and that's because there was a total echo in my headphones. And it was weird because this is the second time we tried to record this podcast, and for whatever reason the echo was in both variations of it. So I'm not sure what is up with that, and I tried to remove as much of it as I could. Thankfully, Jupiter is the one that's talking most in this because it's an interview about him. It's still a great podcast, and I'm stoked for everyone to listen to it. So here it is. Today's guest has over 14,000 miles of thru-hiking experience, and he has a fantastic YouTube channel that documents almost every single one of these adventures. And again, I'm not just saying this, but one of the best, or he probably does have the best YouTube channel about advice on gear, thru-hiking, and all of that type of stuff. His video on the You Went to Highline is actually the one that inspired me to hike it in the next few weeks. So who is this guest? Well, he is the one and only Jupiter Hikes. Welcome, Jupiter.
Oh, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me a second time. You could have just said, nah, dude, go home.
Could have just been like, I'm done. No, I'm just kidding. No, dude, you're a great guy, and I super appreciate you spending the time to come out here and do this. And yeah, like I said, I'm hiking the You Went to Highline next week, or no, in a few weeks, actually. And your video was super inspiring for that.
It's such a killer trail. It's so good. It's hard to take bad video or photos because the entire hike, it's about 100 miles, but 80 of those miles are like above tree line and above 10,000 feet of elevation. And so it's just like, I don't know, mile for mile, like the coolest thing for sure.
Well, you captured it so well, and just definitely the best You Went to Highline video out there for sure.
I appreciate it. I haven't seen the other ones. I did right before I started it, but that was 2019, and there was only like 2. So
yeah,
I don't know what's there these days.
Yeah, it's kind of an obscure trail a little bit, huh?
It was then. I think it's pretty well known now.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's maybe not the Wonderland Trail, but I think it's pretty well known now for sure.
Yeah, the old Wonderland. Well, so again, I've told the story now a few times, but I met Jupiter on the ascent up from the Sandy River on the Timberline Trail. I was running around it, and if anybody knows that trail, they know that. Well, it's actually the opposite of it would be going PCT Sobo actually. And you have to go up the giant ascent up the Sandy River to get back up to the Timberline Lodge. I met Jupiter and a couple of he was with Joe, and then I think a gal. I forgot what her name was. Okay. So he was with those two, and they were super cool. And yeah, man. So I'm super stoked that we can connect again on the podcast.
Yeah, me too, dude. Me too. I wish it was in person, but I guess we cross paths somewhere along the way.
Yeah, no. Well, you're in the van, man. So it's like, man, you could come out version 2. We could do it in the van.
Yeah, well, maybe a different van.
Yeah, the wife. Yeah, maybe
sounds a little small.
Oh, okay, gosh, that's true. That's true. So now, like I was saying, a lot of people know Jupiter from his YouTube videos. I mean, that's where I found him. And that's where a lot of his really, really good information is. But he also keeps a very detailed blog with literal down to the minute details of his different journeys. And just for some examples, he talked about how many thru-hikers he's passed. He passed on the PCT, which was 1,094. How many calories per day he had in each section, starting with the desert, which I thought was very helpful, by the way. Which he started with 2,500 and then had 7,000 by the end of it.
And that wasn't even enough. Like 8,000 probably would have been.
Was it really?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I mentioned that on the website, but in the beginning, like 2,500 felt perfect. whereas by the end, 8,000 would have been the number. Just like, I don't think you need that many calories to like move, and to do like a 40-mile day. I don't think so. But just to not feel hungry, starving all the time, I
Oh,
feel like that would have been it. Yeah.
right. So even more than 7,000 calories. That's so much. Wow.
Yeah.
Were you really feeling like hauling all that weight?
Yeah, always. It's amazing. Like no matter how light your pack is, it will always still feel heavy. But so if if I'm carrying a 5 pound pack and I add in like another pound of gear, a pillow or something, I'm gonna notice it. It's incredible how stupid that can be. So yeah, even after 3 months of hiking and doing this year after year after year, I feel like I still notice that weight. And even when I just add in a couple extra luxuries, I'm like, I wish I was back to my minimal ultralight ways. I don't need these luxuries. I don't want to
Yeah.
carry this.
Mhm. Yeah. So you feel anything that you add into it,
So
into the
yeah, this year I've been trying because I normally use like a tarp and a really like minimal foam pad and
Mhm.
just as minimal as you can go. And this year I'm trying out a tent and like an inflatable mattress and like all these other like
Wow,
yeah, more luxurious
bougie
gear.
boy over here.
And the whole time I'm thinking like it's not worth it. What am I doing? Like I could be just as comfortable with my other garbage bag.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. Well, actually, one of our audience questions that we'll get into at the end anyway. So anybody that's listening from Instagram, they asked some good questions, but one of them was actually about your pads. So we'll come back to that. So that was a good segue. But so what was it like trying to keep these very intricate details about the trail while you were on trail? Was it difficult? Did it occupy your mind? What was that like?
Yeah, so I kept details of every single day of, how many miles I did, where I camped, just what happened that day. I kept details on, as you mentioned, the calories, how many people I ran into. I actually have a giant list of everyone's name,
No.
everyone that actually gave me their name. I've I've done that for a few trails, which has come in handy because I'll meet someone that hiked that trail that year that I didn't meet them, but we can pinpoint where we crossed paths based on where I met other people, mutuals. So I have all sorts of little details and hopefully things that will be helpful to other people. That's partly that I would say that's the majority of why I do that, why I keep all this data is just it's stuff that I want to know myself, stuff when I'm going into a new trail, like what are the questions that I'm asking? So in regards to the people, well, how busy is this hike going to be? Or in regards to permits or calories or towns, food carries, water carries, I keep track of all that stuff. And for me, I would say it's very easy and I like doing that because it gives me like an extra activity throughout my day. Some people are into, plants and kind of maybe paying attention to which plants they're seeing, the flowers they're seeing, and maybe they log that. Maybe a better example would be birds, birders, because all these birders have their like lists of what they've seen and, a daily list, weekly list, monthly, yearly. So it's similar to me as it's just something to do and then something that I hope is helpful for other people.
Dude, I think that's why people resonate with your content so well is because you can like tell that you're genuinely trying to help people.
I try.
Yeah. I mean, and we were just talking about it before the podcast. He made a video about 100 things. I forget what it was titled. Was it like 100 things I learned on the PCT or something like that?
100 tips to through hike the PCT.
100 tips, folks. 100
Yeah.
tips. He made a
I did
video on
another one of those 100 tips for an ultralight backpack. And, I mentioned to Chad that the, I didn't want these to just be like the first thing that came to my mind because I could come up with 1,000. I could come up with 1,000 tips. I wanted these to be things that, are really going to help you, not just like, oh, that's fun, fun little tip. I wanted these to be things that, could like make or break your hike, are really going to be helpful. So, yeah.
Dude. I'm gonna link that video in the show notes too because it was such a really good video. Sorry for that segue. I wanted to go back real quick to the details that you're keeping on trail. It almost sounds like it's kind of like a journaling technique almost. Is that kind of what it feels like too?
Yeah, for sure. I think, whereas maybe some people would journal more about like the feeling of the day without as much of maybe the detail, I'm just purely detail, all detail, no feeling. Yeah. And I don't know, it wasn't always that way for me. I've actually been doing the blog and the website for way longer than the YouTube or anything else, even longer than I've had of Instagram or Facebook. Just and it was always because I wanted to help. So it started out with writing guides on how to hike sections of the Florida Trail, which you can still find on there. And this was, about campsites, how many miles you should average. This was every little detail about the animals, tips on walking through swamp, so it began with a blog. Yeah.
Oh, man. So it started with the blog, went into video.
Yeah.
This was a question I was going to ask a little bit later, but like how do you feel about I know my feelings about capturing video on trail and I think it largely enhances my experience because you're trying to capture details of the trail that maybe you just walk right past.
Mm.
Now, the trap that you can get into, or at least that I do, is sometimes you don't feel like film
Oh, yeah.
and you know what I'm saying? And I'm sure you get that. So at the end of the PCT, you were banging out 40, 45 mile days,
Oh, yeah.
right? And
Right
and
from
so
the beginning. My first day on trail was a 38-mile day. That was day one.
dang, dude. Okay, tell me how because you still capture like cinematic, real good video, right? Like how are you balancing doing that, spending the time there, but also getting your miles in?
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a tough question, and I think it kind of comes down to for me is first I'm not doing a daily. I'm not doing a daily. So from the very beginning, I'm not capturing every moment of the day. So I can really just focus on the big themes. So this section, this 100 miles or 200 miles, that's probably how much like one of my videos would be. And by doing that, it's just like, all right, well, what's the theme of this section? Am I going through some personal problem? Is there maybe some big fire damage? Is it I don't know, really the most beautiful section of this area is, what's the big theme? And I can focus on that. And usually I don't even have to think about that while I'm out there. I just kind of plot around and film little things and figure it out later.
Input. Yeah,
So, so in many ways, I don't have to film nearly as much as a lot of people because I'm not doing the daily.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'd say the other big thing for me is I always want it to be about the hike. I want the hike to come first for me personally. So I don't want to be filming every second. I want to be enjoying my hike to the fullest that I can enjoy my hike, and then you know f- focus on just getting the important stuff.
yeah. Cool. Okay, so instead of I mean, a daily vlog on the PCT, I feel like I would definitely get burnt out. Oh my
It would be a
gosh.
job. Yeah, it would
Yeah,
it would turn your hike into a full-time job while you're out there. When I come home, that's a different story. But then I'm home.
right.
But I don't want to be every town I get into searching for the best Wi-Fi. And if I stay at a hotel that has crappy Wi-Fi, what are you going to do? You got to leave. You got to find better. I don't want to be sitting in my tent for hours editing each night. That's not for me. I'm happy other people do it. I think it's incredible so many people do, but I don't want to do that personally.
Yeah, because the hike comes first.
Yeah.
Right on. Dude, love it. Now, you have 14,000 miles of through hiking experience. What do you think about that, man? When you say 14,000, does that even seem real? Does it even seem like a real number?
Yeah, it seems kind of small
That
because there's always someone doing more.
yeah,
So I could name a lot of people that have a lot more miles than that, where I feel like I'm just trying to catch up to them, but they're still hiking. So I don't know if I'll ever catch up. But it felt really, really special to me to cross over 10,000. That was when I was doing the 1,000-mile Florida Trail for the second time. So 10,000 was a really big number, and now it's like I think 20,000 will be the next really big one, probably in a couple of years or something.
Cool.
But yeah, I'm really happy that I've gotten to experience so much and see so much, and I feel like I don't know an area until I've done a through hike in that area.
Yeah.
I was asked to do like to be a backpacking guide once, and all the trips that they were doing were in areas where I hadn't yet through hiked. And it's like, all right, I have a bunch of backpacking experience and knowledge on gear and tips and skills and whatever, but
Yeah.
like I want to know the plants, the birds, the animals,
Yeah.
you know, the the geology of that area, and I don't get that until I've through hiked it.
Yeah. Dude, I that's funny, man, because I kinda have, like, the same thing going where, like, I almost think of it as the way that I, like, wanna experience the East Coast or something like that. Because I haven't really done anything on the East Coast, but I'm like
It's cool, dude.
I was like, "Well, maybe I should do the long trail for me."
Yeah, have you
Because
done it? Did you do that?
no, no, I haven't. It'll be my
You
triple
should. I
Tiara,
would
though.
love that, dude. I
You
think that
think?
would be a great one for you. Yeah, because it's so like punchy. It's I don't
Mm,
know. You seem very fitness oriented, I would say.
yeah, yeah,
And I think the long trail is super great for that because it's just straight up that mountain and then straight back down, and you're never like climbing just for hours on hours. It's always just physically very, very, very fun and engaging. Whereas a lot of trails it's more about the view, whereas like physically it's less interesting. I could name a few, but I feel like I'd be talking down on them when I'm not. They have different things that are special about them.
yeah.
So the long trail, I think, would really suit you. Yeah,
Oh, dude, okay, man, you're inspiring me. Okay,
it's cool. You'd love it.
that's gonna have to be I'm gonna look into it actually after this podcast. I might be able
Yeah, or
maybe in the
man,
fall.
going off to the Whites and doing like the Pemi Loop or the White Mountains of New Hampshire. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff out there for you. Yeah,
Okay. Dude, that's really cool. And like so I haven't really experienced the East Coast. And so to me, it's like I'm gonna go do a through hike there so I can meet the people. I can get my resupplies or whatever it is that I'm doing. But like I feel like I really intimately experience a place when you're through hiking it.
yeah.
Whether
You certainly get a much better feel for it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of like been my MO. It's like if I'm gonna go travel the East Coast, I want well cool. Well, I'm putting that one on the list. I'm literally, like, writing it down. But yeah, that would be the triple tiara right there for me.
So that's Wonderland. Wait, Tahoe Rim.
So it's
Uh.
JMT,
Okay.
CT, and then
Yeah.
Long Trail. So that
Okay. I've heard of that many times. I just couldn't think of which ones exactly.
would get my little
I'm sure there's another one out there of like slightly shorter, like Tahoe
yeah,
Rim and
right,
I don't
right.
know, some other 100-mile.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's
exactly.
cool.
I actually bike packed the Tahoe Rim. So, but I did it's
Oh,
called the Tahoe Twirl. So obviously you couldn't ride it in the wilderness areas.
remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really cool because you could just it was a circumnavigation of the whole lake, but you were on a mountain bike. It was pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Well, dude, you know how tough the Sierra is.
Yeah,
I mean, and like that's like part of the Sierra, and it was just like over rocks and things, and yeah,
sure.
yeah. But that actually sparks a question for me: is what's been like the hardest terrain for you to hike in? Do you have any that you kind of remember, like maybe North Cascades, the Sierra? Like, what would be the
What do you mean by terrain? Like, how would you define that?
So, like, for me, like, the Sierra is was super tough because it was, like, high elevation, it was super freaking rocky, and, like, you were just doing, like it felt like you were doing giant steps, like, all of the time, and it was just you'd go up the mountain the whole time to summit the pass, and you go down the mountain, and it was just, like, mentally, it was tough too because you had to beat thunderstorms and all that. I would think the Sierra for me would be the toughest. So, like, for you, like, what was, like, kind of the toughest kind of physically and mentally for you?
Sure. I think the Sierra is difficult for like the elevation for me, just being
Mhm.
at that high, you're always winded. Like you're
Sure.
always winded, going up those super high elevation passes and whatnot. But I feel like the trail itself is pretty cruisy because it's an
Mhm.
actual trail. I think what I had just done, the Grand Enchantment Trail, which was
Okay.
about 800 miles through southern Arizona and New Mexico,
Hmm.
800 miles from Phoenix to Albuquerque. And that's not a trail, you know.
Got it.
It maybe there once was trails there that it connected, but it's bushwhacking through thorns and with the rocks, and these aren't like solid rocks. I feel like JMT or something, you step on a rock and it's probably not going to roll on you.
Sure. Sure.
This trail was just like you step on a rock and it's just a dice roll of, is it going to slip out from underneath you? So that was really, really tough. It just very mentally draining, like not really being able to see where I'm going, so
Sure.
navigationally, yeah, every little thing about that was hard.
So tell me more about the Grand Enchantment Trail. I'm not that versed in what that is. I think I've
Yeah.
heard it come up a couple times.
I think it's a trail that doesn't really want people to be versed in it, to be honest. Like I said, it's not really a trail, it's a route, it's a line on a map. There is no trail association. It is just one guy and his wife that are creating resources for it. He designed it, he mapped it, he's hiked it multiple times. His wife has hiked it. And yeah, it's very rough. And I think it's just getting rougher as the years go on because of fires, wildfires. And, with something like the PCT, if you have a wildfire come through the area, you have a whole crew of volunteers to go out there and chop
Right.
down those trees and maintain it and
Gosh.
stuff. And,
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, it's burnt, but it's not that hard physically. Whereas a wildfire comes through this area and, there's no one maintaining it. So it's a lot of blowdowns. And
Oh.
I kind of, I kind of felt that for anyone that really, really, really loved the Pacific Northwest Trail and all the stuff that came along with that, not just the views, but the
Hmm.
fun stuff, then I think then something more along the lines of the Grand Enchantment or the Mogollon Rim or any of those routes would maybe be more in line with what they
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah.
Less people, no people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah. What was that like? I mean, because on the PCT, you have this big culture around it,
yeah.
right? And you're meeting people every day. You passed almost 1,100 hikers. And what was that like going to the Grand Enchantment where it's just like you?
Well, actually, kind of funny about the PCT. I met about 1,000 of those. Well, I think about 900 of those hikers in just the first 1,000 miles. So in the next
Mhm.
1,600 miles, I only met 200 more.
Really?
You know, so as I got more north, there was less and less and less and less people. And come Washington, there were days where I didn't see another hiker at all. Maybe that was because of my pace. Maybe that was because people have dropped out by Washington, or I don't know. So it's just interesting that there's so many throughout the desert and maybe the Sierra, but then anywhere north of that, you're going to see a lot less.
Mhm.
So, going from 1,100 hikers on PCT to 6 hikers on the Grand Enchantment Trail was quite the isolating experience. It was very isolating, and it's so remote that the majority of the time I don't have cell service. For days, I think I went like 9 days with no cell service whatsoever. Not,
Mhm.
I resupplied, and not even in that town did I have cell service.
Ah.
So it's like I can't call anyone or text anyone. I'm just totally alone. And from what I understood, I talked to a couple other people that hiked the trail this year, and one of them said that they only met one other person, one other hiker during their hike, and they were blown away that I had met so many, 6 people. So, that I think that's it right there. It's just like you are alone, and if you get in trouble, you're in real trouble. So,
Now,
yeah,
how
it was hard at times, man. Very hard.
I was gonna say, man, because you're a very charismatic person. And,
Oh,
for me, when I was doing the JMT in 2020, I was going northbound, which was like the way that you usually don't do it. They add it adds 30 miles or whatever you enter from the south.
huh.
And in 2020, there wasn't like anybody on trail. Very,
Oh,
very,
oh yeah,
very,
sure.
very few people. I thought I was gonna have a trail family. I thought all this stuff was gonna happen. Nothing. And
Yeah,
I battled thoughts of being very lonely. Although I like doing things solo. So it was like super it was weird. It was weird to me. Did you ever have like those conflicting things of like, well, I like doing things solo, but dang, I would really like it if someone was hiking with me too.
totally. Yeah, I went through that the entire way, just of, enjoying being so alone, being able to stop and take a break and not have to consider like there's hikers coming up and I got to get moving, or
Right.
you pass someone and you don't want to just keep leapfrogging them. You don't want
I
them
know
to
it's
pass you and you to pass them. You want to, if you're going to pass someone, you want to stay ahead of them. So out there was no concern about that. I could just really enjoy my time and enjoy the landscape and the scenery and everything without concern of other people. But yeah, I think when the trail got really, really, really hard, that was the times where I was like, man, I wish there was just one other person, here to do this with me, to either get through this together or, to keep each other accountable for safety, you know, because it's hard to make the perfect decision every time. So,
yeah. Yes. What did you so those moments hit and you're by yourself. What how did you get out of that? Because that could be like a dark hole to go down. I've been in those before where it's like, ooh, that can keep just spiraling. How did you get yourself out of that?
yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I think generally I'm a pretty upbeat person, can kind of twist anything into a good time. And I mean that's why I went out there. This is why I did that trail. This is why I'm doing the Great Divide Trail next is
Mhm.
I want to broaden my skills, and broaden the environments and the types of problems that I'm dealing with, the off trail travel and the navigation and not really seeing other people. Like that's why I wanted to do these things in the first place. So, I can't go out there and then complain because it's like this is exactly what I chose and what I wanted. So if there's a lot of people after they do maybe the Triple Crown or something, they'll go off and they'll do, I don't know, any other trail. They'll try the Pacific Northwest Trail or the Florida Trail if they want to stick to the national scenic trails. Or I don't know. There's so many cool trails out there, but a lot of people will quickly find that they really do love that community, and
Yeah.
above all, they want that community. So it's certainly not for everyone, and I think it's good to kind of know like what is it you want from these hikes, and I think that can go for gear as well. I'm certainly on the super minimal, super ultralight side. And that's because, like, on the hike, my big focus is, being as comfortable as possible while walking. Whereas if I was out there for the community in even a small way, which I love the community, but I go out there to hike primarily for sure. I would carry, more luxuries for camp. I would carry a stove and a pot to hang around a campfire and cook my food with friends and stuff. But instead, like, I kind of expect to be alone most days. And that's what I enjoy most days. So, I cold soak my food and I bring a pretty minimal kit all around because it facilitates that best. So I guess just knowing what you want and what you're out there for really helps in a lot of ways.
I'm gonna clip this is gonna be clipped for Instagram because that was so good. Know what you want. And I hope
Yeah.
everybody I would encourage people to rewind that whole thing and listen to it again because that's so much gold. When I did when I got off the JMT finally, the year prior I had done some section hike like 240 miles of the PCT. I just did a section hike through Bend, actually around Bend, Oregon, up to Washington actually,
Oh,
Cascade
cool.
Locks. Yeah. And I was like, dude, this is so freaking cool. And then I went to the JMT and there was like nobody on it. And I was like, this is awesome, but I'm super lonely. And I think in that moment is when I actually figured out that, hey, I actually really enjoy the community aspect of
Yeah,
it. Yeah. Even though I go solo, I like going solo because I'm not married to somebody on the trail, if that makes sense.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, you have that option. You can stick with friends or you could move on.
exactly. And that's what I love. And anyway, so I yeah, you just triggered some things of I'm like, "Oh, maybe that is yeah, I do like the community aspect of it." But
And
that was
it goes all sorts of ways too. With like, maybe you just really love testing new gear. It's like, all right, you're not just gonna go super minimal all the time, and you're not gonna be hiking like 40s every day because you want to try out that new camp stove, and you're trying out that new tent, and it's gonna take you a little longer to set up and break down, and
right.
there's all sorts of things. Or like birders. I keep coming back to birds because I like birds. People carrying monocular, full on binoculars, because that enhances their experience so much. Or painters carrying a small paint set, or journalers carrying a journal, and they really, or me, my big luxury is the camera, and I've carried heavy camera equipment where nearly half of the weight that I was carrying, backpacking gear, was camera stuff.
Right.
That's because the hike was very centered around, getting the best footage that I possibly could, and that was my thing. That was what I was out there for. So yeah, it goes all sorts of ways, and I think it's a good question to ask for sure.
Gosh. Dropping bombs, Jupiter. I love this. I love this. Now, you talked about your next trail is gonna be the Great Divide?
Yeah,
He's I'm not familiar with that one either. Can you tell us a little bit about that
sure.
one?
Yeah. Now this is one that doesn't want to be obscure. It's just not one that a lot of people have done yet. Though the Trail Association would love more people out there, from what I understand. And anyway, it's the Great Divide Trail. It's about 700 to 800 miles through the Canadian Rockies. So the Continental Divide Trail, the part of the Triple Crown, 3,000 miles across the country. The Great Divide begins where the Continental Divide Trail ends.
Mm,
So the same terminus, the northern terminus of the CDT, is the southern terminus of the Great Divide.
mhm,
So you're starting at like the border with Glacier at Waterton Lakes Provincial Park, and you're continuing north all the way up past Mount Robson, which I think is the highest point in the Canadian Rockies. And this is through, I guess, BC and Alberta.
mhm.
Goes through Jasper, goes through Banff, big glaciated mountains, moose, grizzly bears. It's
Dang.
going to be incredible, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for sure.
Oh, dude, I cannot wait for you're videotaping this one too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
wait, I cannot wait to see this. Now, okay, so that begins where the CDT ends. That's pretty cool. That's
Yeah, yeah. So
interesting.
for the super ambitious, I think there's been just a handful of people that have done this before, but you could hike the CDT from Mexico all the way up to Canada, and then continue another 800 or so miles into Canada.
Dang.
I know someone did that maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember their name, but it's been done a couple of times for sure. If
Yeah.
you haven't had enough yet.
You know you know who I could see doing that is Joe. Joe
Yeah,
Hick.
yeah. Well, he's got his own project going on right now.
What yeah, what's he doing right now? I know he yo-yoed the PCT, didn't he?
Both him and Mooch.
Oh,
Yeah,
did they really?
yeah,
God.
Mooch. So she was the second female to ever do it, and
Huh.
I don't know how Gasket fits into the whole scheme. Maybe like the fifth or sixth male to do it. Anyway, so they both yo-yoed the PCT last year. Now I think Mooch is, I don't know. Anyway, she's maybe outward bound or like guiding trips, or I think she works as a ski instructor. She's outdoors for sure. But Gasket is currently out on the Appalachian Trail attempting a yo yo of that. So his current project is to yo yo the Triple Crown. So I would imagine the CDT would be the hardest, but it's good that he like really started out with the PCT, because so much could happen. Fires, so much could prevent
Right.
you without you doing anything
Right.
from completing it. You could be in perfectly great health, and fires, snow, all sorts of stuff could come early and just totally stop you. So I think by comparison, the Appalachian Trail yo-yo will be a lot easier than his PCT yo-yo.
Sure.
And
Now
for anyone unfamiliar, a yo-yo is to hike a trail in one direction from termini to termini, and then hike it back in that same season.
Turn right around.
So Mexico to Canada, and then all the way back to Mexico.
Yeah.
So
Gee,
that's what Joe is doing right now.
that yeah, and I remember reading, and I think you said this too in your videos, but like you had started early enough because you're like, I need to get through all this stuff before fires come up.
No, you almost got it. You're very, very close. I started very late, but
Oh,
I went super fast
because of the fire.
because
Okay.
of the potential for fires. So first, I started late because I don't want to step on snow. I want to be walking on dry trail. And then I went really, really fast to avoid fires. So I tell people a lot, you know, be honest with yourself about the pace that you're going to be able to do on something like on a trail like the PCT. And if you're going to go slow, you should start really early. If you're going to go an average speed, you should start maybe somewhere in the middle. And if you're going to go super fast, you should start very late because, it's going to work out well for you with the snowpack. If you start late, but you go fast, you're going to be relatively dry, not walking on too much of that. If you start really early, but you're going quite slow, which nothing wrong with that. You're enjoying it. You're enjoying the town, the scenery, you're enjoying your hike and you're going at a comfortable pace to you. Nothing wrong with going slower. Starting early, you're hopefully going to hit like the Sierra when there's a little bit less snow, but then also hopefully you'll be far enough north before the fires begin. Because I think the fires they're not predictable, but I think it's pretty well known now, like roughly the season when it's going to begin. Late summer, early fall, every year, fire season on the PCT and the Continental Divide Trail at this point. But I don't have as much experience over there, so it's like, all right, late summer comes and I want to, I want to be at least in Northern California. I want to be getting out of there,
Mhm, mhm.
but yeah,
Gold.
a new show through hike.
Yes, another gold nugget, especially for people that are going to be doing the PCT in the subsequent years. When did you start then?
May 10th.
May 10th.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think the most popular dates would be like mid-April, just for like an average pace through hike. Mid-April is probably the most popular, but if you can go faster and you want to go faster, I would not start mid-April. If you are going slower than average, I would not start mid-April. I would start earlier than that.
Yeah.
'Cause I think you're going to run into Mother Nature.
Yes. I really am wondering what some of the PCTers are encountering in the Sierra this year. It's gotta be
Terrible.
pretty crazy.
Yeah, terrible. Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy, crazy, crazy year. Even Utah. Yeah, I'm sure. Dude, when are you
Dude,
starting that trail?
so
Utah's
given
got
that,
a lot of snow. So much snow.
bro, I know. I almost am like, should I do was there when did you do it?
I don't even remember. It could have been as late as September.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty late. It was definitely I think it was late August. Like maybe the last week of August is when I did it.
And how was the thunderstorms and stuff? I don't remember, I guess, off the top of my head with the
There were thunderstorms probably every day, but they were fleeting. They were all passing very quick. So what wound up messing me up was I was out there. I had a pretty bad experience with the storm out there, and the thunderstorms are all right to me, but I got caught in like the first snow of the year. So it's the first snow. It's not totally cold yet. So it started out as just really cold rain, which turned into hail, which turned into snow. And by that point, I'm cold and I'm wet, and it was a very not fun experience. So I'm not from Utah. I can't really speak, especially not the Uintas, which are very different, I guess, from the rest of the state. So it's hard to really give advice on that exactly, but
yeah.
you know, yeah. I don't know. You got to ask someone local. I'm not your guy there, unfortunately.
I know. It's been through my head because I was like, I'm going late July, but obviously they've had a ton of snow.
Yeah.
As I know they had a very warm spell start of spring, but I don't know what it's looking like right now. So yeah, I'm gonna have to
I'm
check with
I'm
someone.
sure it'll be melting so fast. That's part of the issue is like week to week, that could be
Right.
the difference of entire feet of snow has already melted. It's incredible like how quick snow melts off in Washington once it really gets going. You
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There is a
What's
great like I don't know, for all these trails there's like Facebook groups and stuff I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
you're in. They would be the ones to know.
I don't even think I am in the Uinta one. Why am I?
Yeah,
I got
I think it's called like Hi You Into Lovers or something. I
okay.
don't know.
uh,
Yeah, but all about the Uintas.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, when I actually, a matter of fact, when I was doing the Timberline Trail when I met you, I the north side. So we had a big snow year in Oregon that year, and
Yeah.
I was one of the first to, well, basically do the trail that year.
Oh, you were the guinea
And
pig.
yes, I was. I left my review on all trails. I had to because that whole north side was just all snow, and it was a good thing I brought my spikes, my micro spikes actually. And there was
Sure.
Avi fields that you'd had to cross that were super steep, and I was like, there's no way I would have went through those if I didn't bring my micro spikes. And
Yeah.
that, dude, probably it was probably 10 miles of just all snow before I met you. And then I finally started to descend, and then that south side was okay. Actually, there was more snow going through that. That's right, from Timberline to there too,
Yeah,
probably.
just a little bit.
Yeah. But yeah, that north side was pretty nuts. Yeah, snow can super complicate things.
It really can. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, really increase
Yeah.
the difficulty level. So one of my final questions before we get into the rapid fire audience questions would be, what's your thoughts on high route?
High routes. I mean, I guess like that's definitely something I've wanted to get into, but part of the things for me, and I guess part of the problem with something like what I just did, the Grand Enchantment Trail, is people go out there without really knowing what they're getting themselves into and then have to be rescued or just like really hate it. Neither good, you know, very different extremes, but so I've always wanted to just gather my skills and really get to a point where I'm like comfortable with something like that. So at this time, this is now when I feel like a lot more comfortable doing, high routes, off trail travel, like navigating myself, weird resupplies, and just like dealing with that. And, you know, I don't know. I wanted to go into it and not be just throwing myself into like a fire kind of thing. I wanted to go into it and be happy and comfortable and felt like I'm prepared to do it. So yeah, I would love to. I would absolutely love to. Sierra high routes, there's three of them. The Kings Canyon one specifically looks amazing. The Wind River Range high route, I think I'll probably do that on the CDT. You know, yeah, absolutely.
So you have a lot of respect for the high routes and how tough
Oh,
they
for sure. Tons of respect. Like yeah, I it's what I've done 14,000 miles of through hiking, and I'm just now like getting into that stuff because I don't want to be like a statistic. Yeah.
we massively failed Skirka's version of the Wind River High Route last year. It was so hard.
Yeah, I believe it, man.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
I
Looking at it on a map is so different than just being out there. Like reading someone else's trip report. Yeah.
yeah, it was so hard. But if you said you're in the Seattle area right now, if you still are in there, I don't know when you're doing the Great Divide, but if you still are there in the summer, there is a really cool high route called the Alpine Lakes High Route. It's about 24, 26 miles, and it's up by like the enchantments in the North
Oh,
Cascades up
cool.
there. Super beautiful and a good way to like kind of get that feel, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'll feel a lot of that stuff on the Uinta Trail
And okay.
to a much easier degree, but you could easily, I mean, you're entirely above tree line. So you could easily do a Uinta high route, because you can just see it. It's all right there in front of you, but it would involve like crazy amounts of scrambling. But part of why I liked that little hike was it felt like, all right, do you want to stay high or do you want to go check out that lake? You could do either because you could either stand these like rock fields and scree and whatnot, or you could maybe stick closer to the trail. Like it felt like you had all these little options throughout the day,
Yeah.
but to a much easier degree than like something like the Sierra High Route or anything like that.
Well, I hope so. So, I scheduled my shuttle for like, I don't know what day I scheduled it for, but I was like, I think I can get it done in this many days.
I think.
I think I had, it was either like 6 or 7. It
Oh,
was,
yeah, totally.
yeah, I was
I
really
think
being,
so.
conservative. Like, cause I typically like on like on the CT, the Colorado Trail. I mean, I was hiking anywhere from like probably 22 to like 28
Yeah.
a day. So I'm like, do you think it?
Are you going alone?
I'm going alone.
Okay, yeah. I think, I mean, if you can do the Timberline Trail in one day,
Yeah,
then I think you are more than capable enough
cool. Well,
to
I,
bang out anything extra if
well,
you are off pace.
well, look, dude, that's what I thought too about the Wind River High Route, and I think that really bruised my ego.
No,
It's like,
yeah, I can see that.
like,
This will be
come
very
on.
different than something like that.
Okay, good. That's good.
It's the same feeling at
Yeah.
times, but it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I got a couple rapid fire audience questions. I really need to brand this a cooler name. So if anybody ever thinks it's very generic, but okay, here we go. Are you ready? We got about
Okay.
we
For
got about
your super cool audience questions.
yes, 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 yes. We have six. We have six. Okay,
Okay.
let's try to do these in under 30 seconds. Reply.
And I'm long winded, so we'll find out.
We'll see. Okay. Hurricane Scrambles said, are there any US states you have yet to seriously hike that you're curious about?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of the Midwest stuff and also like the Ozarks around like Arkansas and stuff look really cool. I would love, actually, probably my number one where I haven't really spent much time would probably be the Adirondacks. It just, they look so, so cool. And I think you could really string up like a long hike in there, just like peak bagging, but through hiker style.
Mhm.
So probably the Adirondacks in, I guess, upstate New York.
Interesting. Peak bagging, but through hiker style. So you mean like just linking up peaks, but camping in between type of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So probably start out with like 5 days food or something like that, and hiking on established trails, but then maybe deviating off them for a few miles to go bag a peak, come back, and continue on to the next peak and to the next. And they have some pretty like sick looking like ridge lines and stuff in the Adirondacks. So I think you could do some really cool stuff there.
Dope.
Yeah.
Dope.
So upstate New York, probably where I'd be most interested right now, but all the CDT states as well.
Perfect.
Utah, God, Utah, damn.
Yeah.
All right.
So much to do there.
Yeah, too
Okay.
much.
I know. Okay, we got one. Number two is Connor Wendell's. He asks, what's your go-to disc golf driver, mid-range, and putter?
Man, that's kind of funny. A disc golf question in here. All right, go to driver. I'm going to go with a fairway driver, which would be the Undertaker by Discraft.
Nice.
It's just a very straight flyer. It just flies dead straight for me, and surprisingly, that's a pretty hard shot to throw because most discs want to just veer hard left.
Yep.
Anyway, so the Undertaker for my fairway driver. For a mid range, I would probably go with a Buzz, which is another straight one. I guess I like these straight ones.
Hmm.
And for a putter, the Berg. The
Hmm.
Berg. Yeah. So there's
Dude,
all you disc golf people out there.
the curve is called a hyzer, right?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. The Heiser and the Anheuser curving in the opposite direction.
That's right. Anheuser-Busch, right? Yeah.
I think
No,
that's where they got the name.
yeah, they were big. They were big disc golfers. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Probably. I mean, certainly those disc golfers out there, they're drinking. So
yeah. That's for sure. I mean, that was
disc golf, nah, my bet.
true, bro. That was our sport in college.
Cool, man. I never really got into it up until recently, and it's more of just a product of every city has a course. They're all pretty much free, and it's just a nice walk around a park.
Exactly, dude.
Yeah.
And you get to throw shit. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Does it get any better? I don't think
No,
so.
I love it, dude. I love it. Okay, number three, we got from Tight Fumes. They ask how did you keep yourself warm on the PCT with only the 1/8 inch pad?
Oh man, well I've been using that. Okay, so I normally use a little tiny foam pad. It's about 1/8 inches thick. If you can visualize that, 1/8 of an inch
Dude,
thick
that doesn't
foam.
even make sense. That's like cardboard.
Yes, and I've actually, a fun little thing, I've been using that same pad since I started through hiking. So that pad has about like, I don't know, more than 10,000 miles of hiking on it. And it's probably about 1/16 inch inches thick now.
Well,
It
yeah,
looks like a piece of paper
rest. Sure.
because I've slept on it for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of nights. So the trick to actually staying warm with something like that, and why I actually tried a Neo Air recently and kind of didn't care for it, was campsite selection. If I'm just going to pick a campsite that's out in the wind and on top of a mountain at a high elevation and or next to a river, like, yeah, I'm going to be cold. But if I'm finding a spot that's maybe like a little bit lower down the mountain, maybe somewhere in between the valley and the peak, or a little bit lower in elevation, if I'm picking a spot that has a nice natural bed of leaves, pine needles, duff, soft sand, even, if I'm choosing a spot that's sheltered from the wind and it's got trees and it's got rocks, and I'm going to be pretty well off. Now, the advantage of using a thicker foam pad or a inflatable mattress is you can use it anywhere. So personally, I have to avoid sleeping next to water. I have to avoid sleeping on top of a mountain because I'm not going to be comfortable up there. Whereas with an inflatable or a thicker foam, you have more options and you don't really have to consider so much about your campsite.
Wow, dude, that is some knowledge right there. So campsite,
Site selection.
I can't really say that I really look. I mean, I do, but the camping next to water, gosh, does that get cold?
Yeah, it does. So you notice it. So
Yeah,
it's like, when you walk into an area and you suddenly feel it being colder, it's like, wow,
right,
it's amazing to actually feel that and recognize that.
right.
But yeah,
Yeah,
the lighter weight you want to go, the more minimal, the more ultralight you want to go, the more you got to consider these types of things like campsite selection. Yeah.
it's so like pros and cons with everything, right?
Yeah.
It's like you get the
Yeah.
pro, but there's always a con. There's always a after everything in life, right?
Yeah. Well, as I said earlier on, like, ask yourself, why are you out there? And if you're hiking with a group, your group may not want to hike that extra 2 to 3 miles, so you can find a nice campsite that's going to suit your ultralight kit, you know? So it's like, if you're out there to hike with some friends or a partner or whatever, like, it,
Yeah,
it may not, you may want to carry that extra luxury.
it's so
Yeah.
true, dude. Perfect. I love that answer. Okay, we have three more.
Okay.
Wild Cam Outdoors. She asks, advice you'd give your younger self when you first started in the outdoor industry.
Oh man, that's such a hard question. I think like the thing that I would tell me isn't really useful for anyone else. I did a lot of like section hikes. I've done half of the Pacific Northwest Trail. I've done half of the Appalachian Trail and half of the Pacific Crest Trail. I've also through hiked both of those, but I kind of wish I spent my time just doing a through hike instead of a long section hike, you know? So that's what I would tell myself. I don't think it's really useful because I had a great time on all those section hikes. But now that I don't know, I spend every year like chasing after through hikes and stuff. I kind of wish I had just done different things than stuff that I was going to repeat as a through hike later. So
Yeah, because you feel like you're going back and redoing something that you've already done.
yes,
I I gotta say, dude, I hate redoing things. Like when it comes to video editing or something like that, like the worst thing that
I
I've
kind
ever
of
done.
love it, but I wish I would do it less.
Now, what about in the outdoor industry? What would you give your like, or just like in
Oh,
like
like media
YouTube
and
and
stuff
stuff
like
like that?
that.
Yeah,
Man, that's really, really hard. I don't even know.
I think we finally stumped Jupiter on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm
Finally.
like pretty happy the way that I did it because when I first got into doing like the YouTube stuff and the website stuff and anything Instagram, it was just a different landscape. It was a totally different landscape. There was absolutely no one, certainly not in the outdoors. Well, certainly not in the through hiking world, like making any money doing that, and it was very much like shunned to make any kind of money doing that,
Sure.
which now it's like, I don't know, go for it. If you want to do that, if you want to spend your time like working like that, then by all means enjoy it. Try to enjoy it. It's still a job, but yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how I've done it. Though I've certainly like maybe mentored a couple people here and there on like them getting into it and being really gung ho about it. and just telling them like, hey, here's how you can do it now. This wasn't the way for me, but so I would have to know someone specifically. I don't know if I have a great answer for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so you joined at a kind of like the start of all of the thing, like
Yeah, for sure.
YouTube, like when everything started picking up, really, and it's kind of changed since then.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was right there with Darwin and Dixie at that same time. I'm sure many of your listeners know those names. I just didn't, I guess, do it as much as them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, I was there pretty early on with all that media stuff. I think at that time I was really just focused on the website and I don't know, providing like information instead of making videos. It was a little bit later when I actually got into videos.
Hmm, interesting. Cool. Okay.
Wish I had better tips for that
No, well, I think
question.
honestly, dude, I think the best tip is, and
Oh,
I
here's
guess you
one.
did.
Here
Okay.
you go.
Well, I think the best tip, and you didn't really say it, but you can allude to the fact that join getting on something early, the earlier you are, the better. Because once it starts to take off, it's you grow exponentially. I've seen that with me in like TikTok or when Instagram Reels first started. Like I recognize like a pattern, and maybe this wasn't happening when you were doing it. Maybe you didn't even realize it. For me, I was like, I think this is going to be hot. I'm going to spend my time here and, and double down on these things. One of the things, honestly, the reason we were just talking about this, but like YouTube right now is really putting a lot of effort into podcasts.
I have noticed a new tab.
There's a new tab. So when I see that, I think exactly. So when I see that, I think they're going to be their algorithm is going to be over indexing this for the time being. I don't know how long, but I want to be on that upswing.
Sure.
So I always try
Well,
to
here's a
identify.
counter to that. Starting this early, I'm very resistant to anything new like that because I think I've been doing it one way for so long.
Mm,
So, have I ever created a reel?
I don't think I'm not sure. Have you? None?
I've done
You've
one
done one.
reel, and I hate reels. I don't watch reels.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I like photos. I like reading. I like that kind of media for me personally. And I think that's because of when I did start doing it. Instead of if I had gotten into it maybe like 4 years, 5 years later, I think it would be a totally different thing. So I almost think it can be very nice to get in it very early. Certainly for someone like Homemade Wanderlust, it's been very nice. But even her, she's really stuck to her guns of what she's always done is what she's still doing today. The exact same things. It's not really she hasn't hopped on those reels. I don't think she has a tick, and it,
Yeah.
it goes very similarly for me where, I am doing what I have always done with adding in new things here and there. But here's where my actual tip comes in, which I thought of is do you do what you enjoy. Because if you aren't going to enjoy doing it, then I don't think it's worth doing. So for me, like I don't necessarily enjoy making those reels. I like to focus on a bit longer form content, longer form videos and stuff. So that's more like my style and my way. Certainly not what the algorithm wants, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I can live with that. And I've been doing more of like I've always been a painter. I actually used to teach acrylic painting classes for a little while. And so I've been doing more stuff like that. I actually just sent a design to Enlightened Equipment. So
Oh, really?
look out for something like that they're putting out.
Oh,
So I have my own personal paintings on my website and so that wasn't something I had always offered or done or shown as much as maybe I do now. But, so for me, just like the hiking and filming, I always want it to be something I enjoy. And like if I were to do the daily vlog, coming back to that, for instance, I don't think I would enjoy that. And I don't think I would keep doing it, which I kind of believe that it would ruin the through hike for me. I said that before, that doing a daily thing would ruin the hike for me personally. So do what you enjoy. Do what you like, do what you watch and what you want to watch. So that's why I do all these like tips and helpful things and through hiking specific and ultralight specific. because that's what I've always wanted.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah. Well, and it shines through in your content too, because you come off as way more genuine as opposed to if you're just doing something
yeah,
to thankfully for me, I like doing reels and I like doing long form
yeah,
and I like doing
and they're
podcasts.
great.
Right.
Yeah,
And so like it's
you're the only
really
person I follow that does those things
right.
consistently, and I enjoy
Right.
them.
I know.
I'm not interested in like a lot of other people
Yeah.
that are doing that.
Right. Well,
You
that's good
know?
to know. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it really it will shine through. It'll take your content to the next level, I think.
Yeah, if you truly enjoy what you're
Mhm.
doing, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of just I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's
and I think it's also fantastic that there's all these different avenues. Like you like making the reels and you make fantastic reels and hilarious reels. I love the comedy ones, and then that's not for me, so I make these longer videos, you know, and then there's all these other people doing all these other things, and it's so cool that there's so many different avenues of, what do you want to follow? There's people that just do podcasts alone. There's
right.
all these cool things out there for every style of what you want or what you want to do personally.
Yeah.
So
Dude,
that's the best part.
to piggyback off of that, my you might be floored by this, but my job out of college for 9 years before I quit my job this year was in the criminal justice system. I was actually working with folks on parole and probation, doing cognitive behavioral therapy groups and things like that. When I first, though, started my internship out of college, I was thinking I wanted to be a probation officer. Throughout the subsequent years, I was told many times by coworkers, and they weren't being malicious or anything, but they were like, "You're too nice.
Uh,
You like you have to like do this and be stern and terse and this." And I was just like, "Man, that's just not me." And
yeah,
so I battled this thing for years. I was just like, "I gotta be better at this." And like, but finally, once I started getting into content, I'm like, no, I actually just like communicating with people. I like to communicate.
yeah,
And and I guess I'm a nice guy, and maybe that will work in a podcast realm. And so now I think I've really realized that like, oh, I'm way more happier doing a podcast talking to individuals like you that are super inspiring, have real good energy, as opposed to what I was doing before. And I was like, no, that was just the wrong fit. And then so once you find your strength, I was like, I got to double down on this.
yeah.
So
That's awesome. I'm glad you did.
yeah,
I'm absolutely glad you did.
yeah,
Yeah. I think it's so cool that everyone has found like, all these different avenues of either how to make a living or I don't know, just how to have fun in their
sure,
own special way.
yeah. I love it. Dude, I wanna end on that, but I have one more question. I have one more question
Okay.
from my buddy,
Mm.
and I think this will be a good one to end on. So, Grateful Gatsby, also known as Sean Ennis, he's from Zurich. Good. He just asked, "What have you learned about living after hiking all of these miles?" I know that's a very general question,
It
but
is kind of tough because I've been living this way now for a while, like 8, 9, 10 years, something like
yeah,
that. So sometimes it's hard to like see exactly what I'm doing from the inside. But first, like I don't need as much as I don't need a whole lot to be happy, you know?
love that.
Like, I really want the things that I own to be of value to me and be things that I use, just like in backpacking. If you're carrying stuff you don't use, what are you doing with it? So it's same within life with just things that you own. If you're not using it, if you're not wearing it, if it's just like cluttering your life, and what are you really doing with it? And that could go for like physical objects, or that could go for, I don't know, even relationships or just feelings and thoughts about yourself. If it's not useful to me, then I try not to keep it around, or I try and with products and things trade it in for something different that I am going to use. So that's really been a big one, and I guess like the through hiking is kind of, I don't know, it broke me in the way of like I don't think anyone should spend their life just working every single day and taking like 2 weeks of vacation per year. I think you should I think everyone should get out and do the things they want and see the world and experience the world if that's what they want. Because some people don't want that. I've known many people that are like super happy, and what they want is they want their home, they want their minivan, they want their kids, and that's like their passion and their life. That's great, you know? But yeah, through hiking definitely ruined me in the way of just, I really want to get out and experience these new places and these people and just see the world. That's why I bought the van, and it's certainly come with so many struggles in a lot of different ways, but it's also just like this avenue for me to visit and drive around the country and see all these new towns and stuff.
Mhm.
So, same with through hiking. So, I guess that's why I continue to do it, because every year I get to see new places. I get to interact with locals and learn the history of their areas. And I don't know, just like develop this deeper appreciation for places that otherwise I never even had heard of. And I just think it's super cool and fascinating and fun. And yeah, so I want to keep doing this for as long as I can.
Dude, what a way to end the podcast, man. What a way. I just want to say thank you for coming on, man. You came out here with a smile the whole time. We had a little technical difficulties
Oh, yeah.
and got them resolved. And man,
Life.
yeah. But round two, you just knocked it out of the park, man. So this is one of my favorite, if not favorite, podcast interviews I've done. So I appreciate you. Where can people catch up with you at?
If you just search Jupiter Hikes, you'll find me. Jupiter Hikes on YouTube, Jupiter Hikes on Instagram, jupiterhikes.com, Jupiter Hikes on Facebook. I definitely post the most on Instagram and YouTube. So those would be the two biggest places to find me.
Perfect, dude. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna end the recording right now.
Cool. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Yes. I'm gonna